Welcome to How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast, a mix of both solo episodes and expert interviews. Our ideal listener is an early career, ambitious, and passionate online language services provider. She is committed to professional growth and achieving success in the fiercely competitive translation and interpreting industry. She balances multiple responsibilities with resourcefulness, values mentorship, is open to learning, and investing in her professional development journey. She embraces technology and seeks to optimize workflow, eager to connect with like-minded peers and build out her professional network. She is determined to overcome challenges and become a sought-after freelance translator. And here's your host, medical translator and translator business mentor, Jason Willis-Lee.
And welcome to How to Find More Direct Clients, the podcast that makes digital marketing both easier and more enjoyable by blending smart business strategies with just the right touch of tech. I'm your host, Jason Willis-Lee, digital marketing specialist, and today I'm very excited to welcome my special guest. His name is Mark Franklin, and he is a mindset and business strategist. Mark, fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on. How are you today?
I'm very good, Jason. Thank you for the invitation. It's lovely to speak to you.
You're very welcome. Mark, can you start by just sharing a bit about your business journey and tell us about the four fears? What are the four fears? Because you're known as the four fears guy. What are these four fears?
The four fears guy. Okay, well, I'll start with the four fears, which are essentially that fear of not being ready, of not believing that you're good enough, the fear of not having enough time to do what it is that you want to do.
Yep.
And the fourth one is that overarching fear of failure, the kind of what if I get it wrong? What will other people say? What will people think? And in terms of the journey towards the four fears, so my background is actually graphic design and visual communication. So the past 25 years, I began my journey as a marketing designer. So I was creating all the kind of tools, incentives, resources, and things that sales teams would use to go out and find success, get more clients, grow sales, grow the business that they were in. And something that I learned on that journey as I actually progressed through the company that I was in was no matter what tools you give a good salesperson, if they don't have it within themselves, that kind of confidence, that self-belief that they are worthy of the success and the sale and the conversion and the conversation, all the tools in the world aren't going to make a difference. They need that kind of, I am good enough, I am ready, I do have time to make this right, and success actually is something that I deserve. So I kind of made that sort of shift from a career point of view from the marketing and design into the sort of mindset, personal development, mentorship, coaching, helping people kind of make that shift from where they were to where they deserved to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in a nutshell, that's it really, Jason.
Okay, so how can entrepreneurs recognize when fears like rejection or fear of failure are holding them back, and what can they do to overcome these barriers?
It's a very good question because recognizing and acknowledging those fears is quite a big step. Because if you think about sort of the aspects of our day-to-day business, there's always things on our to-do list that we know we should do, but for whatever reason, we're putting them off. And one of the sort of most interesting and sort of frequent conversations I have when you dig into those four fears, the first one that most people kind of come up with is that I don't have time.
Yep.
And the great thing about I don't have time is it doesn't elicit that kind of deeper emotional conversation. It's easy enough to say, I haven't got the hours in the day, so I can't do it, so I'm going to put it down. Then you get into that, well, okay, we all have the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours in the day.
Mm-hmm.
If you just focus on the things that do make the biggest difference, that would serve your journey and help you move towards success, and cut out some of that noise, it's not really about the time. So what is it actually about? And that's when you get into that kind of acknowledgement of, it's not that I don't have time to do that thing, it's that thing scares me a little bit. I have this fear of not being ready. I don't think I can do it yet because it isn't perfect. If I put it out to the world now, what will people think? What will they say? Is it good enough? All the fears kind of interlock in that sense.
Yeah.
And in terms of what can we as individuals do when we recognize that fear, something, because I'm actually just literally writing this particular chapter of a book that I'm working on at the moment.
Yep.
It's almost kind of like building a case or an argument for the defense. These mind monkeys, these kind of hesitations to say to you, you're not good enough, you're not ready. But if you dig into your story so far, what's got you to where you are right now, there are plenty of circumstances, occasions where you have been good enough, you have been ready, you found the time to do the brave thing. And leaning into those sort of more positive, logical, factual pieces of evidence that prove how capable you are,
Mm.
dialing down some of that sort of more emotional, less logical, that kind of gut reaction that you have. That's I'm going to say sort of the secret, the trick, I suppose, to kind of embracing. I'd never say dismiss or dial down the fears because we're human. We're always going to have those wobbles.
Yep.
But if we embrace them, move closer to the point that when we see them, we acknowledge them and say, okay, this is a thing, but I'm going to put it back in its box and move on. That's how we move forward, I think, anyway.
I don't have time. I'm not good enough. What about procrastination? The kicking the can down the road constantly and just say, I'll do it tomorrow.
Absolutely. I mean, that's sort of falls somewhere between that I'm not ready and that I don't have time.
Yeah,
Because the I'm not ready is perfectionism, essentially. It's
sure.
this thing isn't good enough yet. And I'm going to keep tinkering and playing around the edges until, it is perfect. Of course, nothing is ever perfect.
Mm.
And that's where sort of the procrastination kicks in because you're putting together a beautiful design on Canva and you're just changing the colors and the fonts and you're skirting around the edges of actually, if I just get it out there and let people talk about it, something magical could happen.
Yeah, I totally get that. As entrepreneurs, we're taught things don't have to be perfect. You just launch something imperfectly, then reiterate. And I had someone give some feedback on a book I published a few months ago, and she said, "This isn't perfect. The flow could be improved, and this and that." And I thought to myself, well, yeah, is this person an entrepreneur? I thought, yeah, of course it can be improved. Everything can be improved. But if you wait until it's perfect, you never launch it, right?
Exactly.
Um, let's go into fear of success. Why do you think fear of success is so often overlooked? And how can we as online business owners manage the challenges that come with online growth and online visibility? Why is fear of success overlooked? Why aren't we more keyed into this?
I mean, there's an interesting parallel to be drawn between fear of success and fear of failure,
Hmm,
because in both, that definition of what success looks like and what failure looks like is entirely personal.
sure.
So we can make this sort of huge mountain out of the molehill of what failure actually is. Failure is never actually as bad as we like to think. Equally with success, it seems counterintuitive to us, I think of success as a bad thing. So we don't talk about the fear of wanting to do well in the same way that we talk about the fear of things not going according to plan.
Hmm,
But if you dig into those other fears again, so the fear of not being good enough, not being ready, not having enough time, those are essentially the fears of success. It's that imposter syndrome, that kind of I'm not worthy of,
yeah,
you know, the acclaim, the success, the happiness, the financial reward, whatever it is that success looks like for us. That sort of fear of being caught out, being seen as a
as,
fraud.
as the fraud. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome is so huge, isn't it? I mean, I relate to this constantly. Do you know when I most get imposter syndrome? It's when I feel I'm on the verge of some kind of breakthrough or some positive thing, publishing the book or a boost in my email list or a couple of one-to-one clients come in on board. Yeah. And that's when I get the imposter syndrome even more. Is that normal just to get it before what appears to be a success on the horizon? Do you get it worse? Is that in the literature? Is that something you can relate to?
Uh, yeah, I think that's a sort of a fair sort of explanation or example. In so much as the closer you get to that success you fear,
Mm,
perhaps the more afraid you feel.
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
because it becomes a little bit more sort of tangible. You're in that moment where something magical is about to happen,
That's it.
and therefore, whichever way it goes, you feel closer and more sort of vulnerable, I suppose, to that scale, that tipping scale.
Agreed. Mark, you and I met through community. We were both on a group, an online group for Atomicon this year.
Yes.
You attended in person. I think I was online. I was checking it out, and will definitely attend next year. And you're top of the list of people I want to de-virtualize. Obviously, I know you quite well online. Haven't met you in person, but I will do. So my question is what role does community and mentorship, I suppose, within community play in overcoming our fears of failure, of success, and how can online business owners just leverage community to push past, break through the barrier and go outside their comfort zones?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason. And I think you can't underestimate the power of community and connection. I mean, as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, business owners, we wear many hats. We often work a
Yeah,
lot on our own, just sat at our desk, and that
yeah,
kind of loneliness increases the risk, I think, of us kind of slipping into those mind monkeys of, am I doing a good job? Is this okay?
yeah.
Am I actually doing the right things that move me forward? When you're surrounded by a community, and there's kind of an interesting story, which I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but the kind of origin story of the four fears for me was being in a room with a group of people who I consider to be incredibly successful.
Mm,
And when literally interviewing them in terms of what was working well for them and how are they finding that success, they themselves couldn't see it. They felt slightly fraudulent. They felt that they didn't deserve it. They were going to get caught out. But everyone else around the room was kind of pointing at them and saying, "Oh, but you're so amazing. I'm so impressed by what it is you do here, there, and
mm,
everywhere. I wish I could be like you." Community is that kind of cheerleading sort of, that support network, the people who
yeah.
just, they can reassure you in those moments of hesitation that actually you're doing a good job. And Atomicon, and there's a number of other sort of communities that we've both kind of, encountered.
Mm,
Again, just having, as we have actually in the last sort of few weeks, just having the opportunity to speak to someone and say, I'm thinking of doing this, not feeling entirely confident or comfortable with it. What do you
mm,
think?
mm.
Makes a massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I should say to our audience, we are accountability partners. We just had a chat before recording about, status quo of our businesses and what we're working on, what we think we're lacking on. Yeah, community has been super important for me. I totally agree. If this is the one call on my schedule today, so it would be a very lonely workday without this conversation. So I'm hugely grateful for the contact with you. Thank you. So those are the sort of four fears. When is your book coming out? You're publishing this book, well, you're writing it as we speak. Next
Fingers
year?
crossed. February. Yeah, so it should be out
Nice.
February is the goal.
Okay, and this will be traditionally published, or are you self-publishing on Amazon, Kobo, all these things, Ingram Spark, or will there be a paperback that we can buy in the shops?
There will be a paperback, whether it's in the shops or not, I don't know. Certainly it'll be available
Yeah,
sort of online. My
sure.
goal with the book, if I'm honest, is to start sharing the story behind the fears.
Yeah.
Because obviously from my point of view, no one like immediately puts their hand up and says, I'm struggling. I need some help. So it's kind of breaking down, as you say, or as you said at the start, that kind of, acknowledging that these fears are there,
Mm,
they're okay, and embracing them rather than trying to sort of ignore or dismiss them is the way forward. The book is simply a tool to kind of allow people to have that conversation with themselves and then hopefully with other people. So whether it'll be all sorts of things. It'll be digital. I'll give it away at events. It'll be
mm.
hopefully purchasable, from Amazon and so on. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
What's your personal spin on this topic? Because I know there are other books out there. There'll certainly imposter syndrome. We both encountered an expert on imposter syndrome a short while ago. What's the Mark Franklin spin on this? How do you spin the four fears that other people don't?
I think it is that kind of, or I hope it is that simplicity of the four fears.
Hmm.
We've talked about procrastination, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, fear of failure, vulnerability. These are things that hundreds, countless of books and essays and podcasts and things talk about all the time. But condensing them into this kind of package of four very much overlapping, overarching um, key topics
Hmm.
and exploring that relationship. And again, sort of pulling it back to the it's okay. There's thousands upon thousands of years of kind of, our brains trying to keep us safe. from all sorts of dangers. Dangers have changed, a lot. An awful lot's happened in the last 50 years, let alone the last sort of 500 years.
Yeah.
So failure and danger mean completely different things now, but our brain hasn't caught up. And so just trying to sort of take all of that noise and pull it down into four simple kind of ideas that we can get our heads around. Hopefully
Mm.
that's the unique take.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful thing, audience, to meet someone who's turning up the volume on something everyone, I think, can identify with one of those four Fs, fear of something. I mean, I certainly can. So this is it's fantastic to see someone really turning up the volume on this topic.
Thank you.
Mark, final five quick fire questions. What are you reading right now? Or what was the last book you read, if you haven't got one on the
What I'm
boil?
reading right now, it's literally above my head. So I'm reading Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek,
Yes.
the big
Start
why.
with why. Yes,
Start with
exactly.
your why. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get there. That's a good book to recommend the audience. Mark, what's the best business advice you've ever received during your career, or perhaps given to someone else, maybe a mentee?
Oh, that's a really good question, Jason. The best business advice.
That's the first thing that comes to mind.
First thing that pops into my head. So a mentor that I used to have in my corporate role, I guess, was very simply get out of your own way.
Oh, I
And I
like
think
that.
that's probably the best thing I've ever been told. Again, it all plays into the fears,
Of what your
but it's
specialism is, yeah.
yeah, but it is exactly that. It's just be brave enough to try.
In the sense that we are our own stumbling block sometimes. We are our own enemy.
Yeah,
So,
I like to think, and again, based on sort of 20 plus years of conversations with hundreds, if not thousands, of small business owners, the one person holding each of us back tends to be ourselves. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, unfortunately, there will be people around us, I'm sure, in our kind of immediate circle, but most of the time, that one voice of dissent that we listen to the most is ourselves.
yeah, I
And we've got the
totally
power to change that. We've got the power to
totally
change it.
relate to that. Yeah, yeah. Using just one word, Mark, how would you describe mindset strategy? Just one word. What would you boil it down to?
Essential.
Mm, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. And what's the biggest myth that people come to you with when it comes to mindset strategy? I like to bust myths. I think myth busting is a part of entrepreneurship. I do this in my webinars. I try and take a polarizing view, adopt the opposite view, and say, well, actually, it's not like that. It's like this. And that's a way that I set myself apart. It's a sort of talk aboutable edge that I have that people can note. What's one myth, do you think, when it comes to mindset strategy?
I think we've already touched on it. It is that sort of, I'm going to be blunt, the excuse of not having enough time.
Mm,
Um, it is never about the time.
yeah.
It's about that much deeper reason that is preventing you from doing the things that you know you should be putting the time into.
Mm. So I was at an event recently, I just told you before we came on, Long Haul Leader in Cambridge, hosted by Chris Tucker, and there was a lady talking about, a woman talking about productivity, and she was from Proper Plan. Her name was Laura Phillips. Gave a very good talk about extracting time or buying back, I think, a lot of time. How
Mhm.
much overlap is there between mindset strategy that you're talking about and productivity and putting that time in the Pomodoro technique and doing slamming out 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, whatever it is. I like 2 hour blocks personally.
Yeah.
How much of an overlap is there between productivity, space, and literature and mindsets, what you're talking about?
I think there's an awful lot of both journeys that run in parallel. I mean,
Mm,
one of the ways that I work, I think you have to begin with the real key question: what is it you really want?
yeah.
And why is that so important to you? You're prepared to do the brave things in order to make it happen. Once you have that kind of clarity and bravery around the big picture, how you then allocate the time you need to achieve the things you need to achieve becomes a little bit easier. Then you can kind of get into the productivity sort of hacks, tools, platforms, resources that work best for you. I'm a morning person, so
Mm,
I set out my mornings very much with a not a to-do list, but things that I know if I can achieve those in the first few hours of the day, that set me up,
yeah.
and that really helps. Otherwise, I'll slip into the fears, I'll slip into the procrastination and the kind of Again, tinkering around the edges. So I think there's a very sort of synergized journey between knowing what it is you want, why that's important, then using, as you say, the various techniques, hacks, platforms that are right for you to stick to the plan.
I'm the same. I like starting work early. I like hitting the papers early, 8:30 at the latest. If I haven't done a workout before that, earlier sometimes. Mark, where can my listeners connect with you to learn more about your work and your expertise? Where's the best platform to hook up with Mark Franklin?
So everything really kind of exists on markfranklin.co.uk, which is nice and memorable. That's my website. But the place or social space that I hang out most, I guess, would be LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I'm easy to find on there. So sort of Mark Franklin, Four Fears guy. And that's where hopefully I add a lot of value and share some good tips and advice and have lots of lovely conversations.
Any final key takeaway, Mark? What's the key takeaway? Maybe someone's listening who's really relating to what you've said about these fears, fear of failure, fear of success, procrastination, productivity problems. What's a final takeaway, sort of key message to give them?
As big as those fears sometimes seem, they're wrong. Because you are ready, you are good enough, you do have time, and failure can sometimes be the greatest gift you give to your business journey. So keep going.
That's a wonderful note to wrap it up for today's episode of How to Find More Direct Clients. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions on the ever-evolving landscape of language and digital marketing. Until next time, do remember to stay on your game and future-proof your career in the era of AI. Bye from me and bye from my special guest, Mark Franklin. Thank you.
Here's a fun fact about Jason. Jason is a big Back to the Future fan. Thanks for tuning in to the How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, why not head over to www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com to access all our tools and resources to monetize and future-proof your freelance translation business. And don't forget to hit the plus button in Apple Podcasts or iTunes, or subscribe in Spotify to be notified when new episodes drop. For regular tips and insights, business strategy, or marketing techniques straight to your inbox, please sign up at www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com.